interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Hotep, I am that I am. Some call me Heru, your modern monk, your cannabis fitness strategist, back at it again, here for you and here with you. With episode number 94, the surveillance pandemic, with a special guest today, Gene from Wine Jar Cynics. Yes, so...
How are you doing?
We doing great, brother. How you doing?
We're doing great. Usually I'm here with Theo and Mac, my co-host, but I'm going to be here on behalf of them as well.
Yeah,
from the package. We'll open the pack.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Actually, a dog pack. You know, we have a segment which we call Watchdogs. That's where we talk about tech cynicism. We talk about surveillance. We talk about sometimes we haven't talked about government corruption or scandals yet, but that'll be soon. So on the normal One Jar Cynics, we usually talk about philosophy, cynicism, philosophy, sometimes a little bit of stoicism and history. So they're pretty vastly different, but the whole point of the Watchdogs is to apply some of the topics we discuss on the One Jar Cynics channel.
Okay.
So a lot of it has to do with cynicism, and we're talking about the old cynicism that's from 2,000 years ago. You know, this is a philosophy that Socrates essentially started, that Diogenes followed, that also the first Stoic, Zeno. So this is a philosophy that's very old, very rich in culture. It's very old. It's very congenial with all the American attitude on life. So freedom, liberty, and I guess justice too, whatever that means. But
so let me pause you for a second. So what has brought your interest to this particular these particular subject matters when you're talking like philosophy and the certain I know you guys are offering not a lot but a few different podcast shows. So what has been the inspiration? What has been the background of you getting into this philosophy per se, or you studied it, or what has kept your interest? What has been your interest, and why do you want to share these particular subject matters?
So yeah, if we want to go really far back, we're talking about since I was a kid. I've always liked philosophy, but natural philosophy, meaning astronomy, science, physics, biology, that's the natural philosophy of the universe. But it wasn't until I got older, until I started working, traveling, seeing other parts of the country, then I started developing less of a scientific aspect on the world, because I was understanding that science is very good. It's a good tool. It's an eye opener, but you need a philosophy based on ethics, not just the nature of the universe, but ethics, how you behave yourself in the world, and how you things of that nature. I think maybe 2016 when I went to China, that's kind of what woke me up, because back then I wasn't really. I think it's not until I started working and seeing, I had a good experience in China. I would say 90% of it was a positive experience. I would say 10% of it was negative. I saw things that that were, I guess, something I never really felt before. So first off, like I could see how they treated other people, how they treated some foreigners, and how tightly. I guess they had their people on a leash very tight. There were certain subjects you couldn't talk about, like taboo subjects, like Taiwan is not a country, it's a province. Don't talk about certain ideas with
and
also the fact that I had some issues with some people. I wanted to know too much. I wanted to know the truth of certain things, so I asked so many questions, and I'm a very curious person, because of my background in a stargazer as a kid, and that's
okay.
So they pretty much told me oh, it's always you Americans that are asking questions. I knew this was going to be an issue. I knew this would be an issue that an American would want to know things. I'm like, so when I heard that, I was like, I don't know what she means by that. What does that have to do with my nationality?
Yes.
Because, right? Then I started, when I came back to the U.S., I started understanding what I took for granted. And then what I understood what I was taking for granted the whole time I was traveling and working and, exploring was certain, at least constitutional amendments that we take for granted. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the right to believe in whatever you want to believe, all those above, even the right to brandish, bear an arms. And by the way, I say bear because of what's happening recently with the statements for the commander-in-chief, right?
Sure.
Bear. So, sure. And then what led me to cynicism, because I know it's a long story, was essentially I started really understanding, maybe it had to do with entrepreneurship and content creation, because I was working at the airport, and it was a not a bad job, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't angry, but I wasn't happy, so I was just tolerant.
Okay.
And I was
Okay.
And I was like realizing that other people did podcasts, like people like Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. I know people think they're very controversial figures, but the ideas I was listening to at the time were not controversial. I was really learning about self-efficacy, and then I was also studying a bit on Diogenes, the founder of the Cynic philosophy.
Okay.
And he talks about, and Socrates, and they all talk about self-sufficiency. And at the time, I'm like, yeah, that sounds good to me, because I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to work for myself. I'm done dealing with coworkers. I'm done dealing with bosses. I'm done dealing with, the world. And I've always wanted to be kind of a hermit and, live in Alaska, funny enough, and be, like, self-reliant. So when I started learning more about the philosophy of cynicism, that's the stuff that kind of taught. And also, when I came back to the U.S., things were a lot more political. So, cynicism teaches to, challenge the status quo. This comes from Socrates. Challenge the status quo.
Sure.
Challenge societal norms.
Sure.
Challenge learn philosophy. Also, they call themselves the dogs, right? Because, cynicism means dog in Greek. So really it should be called cynicism because it's kynikos, not cynikos, like most people say. And, so the dog is supposed to symbolize loyalty. And I wanted to be loyal to something. I had my ideas of the world, but I felt like I was, jumping around too much and inserting, you know what I mean? Some people do that. They kind of jump around.
No, it's understanding. I think it's understanding because you definitely got, like I said, you got so many things that's pulling your attention. You see what I'm saying? Pulling your attention. And the crazy thing is, how would we even, when you think about it, because I think we have too many, it's so many out there, so many elements that's pulling your attention, keeping you away from you, if that makes sense. You see what I'm saying? Grasping what you truly actually represent, or I wouldn't say belief, because I do have a problem with those terms, belief and believe, and these particular terminology that we have been grasping, because it's really no universal truth when you really put it in perspective. The only truth is what you resonate on, what makes sense to you. You feel what I'm coming from? So I get what you're saying, especially with all the especially being here in this country, so-called America. We claim that we got this freedom of speech, but they tend to soon as somebody's actually bucking the system, they get knocked down or no longer relevant.
And that's why I call that's the whole aspect of cynicism that I like, which is cynicism and stoicism. They're cut from the same cloth. The first Stoic was a cynic. His name was Zeno, and I love stoicism. But also, there's an aspect of stoicism I don't like. I don't like how it teaches a bit to be conform and toe the line a bit.
Yes. Agree.
Which is good. You should, try to live in harmony with civilization, with society. You should try to, but at the same time, sometimes I think you should be a bit of a cynic, in the old sense, because the modern sense of the word has been distorted because there's a long history of cynicism and how it's transformed and the history and the people most of the stuff we know about the cynics are based on people who don't like them, who are mad at them because they keep questioning things. So that's why they write bad things about cynics, and also the fact that the first cynics were they were radical exhibitionists. They liked to sleep naked. They thought they were dogs, so they thought they were that aspect I don't agree with.
No, and like I said, it's all relevant to those particular people who have that particular mindset. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're doing anything, you're always working on improving yourself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And and I was talking about the questioning the status quo. I mean, including here, here in the U.S., including what's going on right now with things that have to do with freedom of speech and these private companies and all those things. I mean, people should have a discussion about it, talk about it.
Sure, you're right.
I think people are, but I'm just saying that in Stoicism, it's not really a tenet. You know what I mean? Whereas in Cynicism, it is. It's all about diatribes and satire and freedom of speech. I mean, there's a Greek word for freedom of speech. It's called, I think, parousia. And parousia means, and their freedom of speech, from what I understand, in Greek, means to say anything at all. Which is funny, because if you start looking back at history, they killed Socrates.
Yes.
For using parousia, freedom of speech. So you start questioning that. Like, do you guys really believe that? Because he was questioning, the gods at the time.
Status quo,
corrupting views.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, question everything. I mean, ever since I came back, there's a lot of information overload. There's a lot of tribalism, partisanship. So that kind of helped me cope with it a bit. So there is a bit of doubt in me, but I think cynicism is also a philosophy of optimism.
Yes.
Because the original cynics, they believe that the people who are, conforming to these artificially created standards that make people unhappy, like wealth, status, fame, and power, and all this, it really does make people unhappy. So for the most part, I feel.
Yeah, and make them complacent. I think people get complacent. Most people are really complacent. They settle. They don't really, especially when it comes to like, I mean, even with these celebrities, for example, you got these celebrities like DMX just died. And it's kind of interesting how we don't take me wrong. I'm not bashing, all respect to him, rest in peace, whatever. But my point is like, it seemed like we put these, I don't know if it was drug related or whatever the case may be, but it's like we push these people on these pedestals, or we put these people on these pedestals, and we don't realize that they're human too. You know what I'm saying? They're human too.
Yeah, it's a weird way. It's kind of like quasi-religious, meaning it's not really religious in the standard sense, but it's like almost like a fake religion. You're putting these people on a pedestal as if they were like demigods.
Yes.
People you must worship. You must understand their whole life. I mean, if you like, I have celebrities I like too. I mean, but I don't, put them on a pedestal. If I ever met them, I'd say, oh yeah, I like your movies. You're a cool guy. But then, there's some people who, there's extremist people in all
aspects.
Yes.
That's
what I've been learning.
Agree.
And in Cynicism, they talk about this. They call it frugality, medenagan, which is comes from Apollo, the maxims of Apollo, the sun god.
Okay.
And it means nothing in excess. And then that's something that I think a lot of the stuff from Cynicism is pretty good. I think some of it is bad, but I modify it. It's kind of like the way the Romans did it. The Romans, they adopted Cynicism, but they modified it to a way that it would be it would correlate to the traditional Roman values, right? Like modesty and all those things. So if you want to learn Cynicism, what was that?
No. Go ahead. It's all good.
If you want to learn about Cynicism, which I think you should, because I think it's a very old religion, not religion, but I mean there is some religious aspect to it, but it's not. We were going to talk about that, but it's not. It doesn't really tell you to worship any god, so it's not really religious. But there's a lot of good stuff to it. It's a simple philosophy. You know, what it is sophos, nomos, logos, which is in Greek is sophos is wisdom, nomos is norms, and logos is logic. So
okay.
sophos is, you know, try to find wisdom. Try to find wisdom. Nomos means, you know, try to defy the norms, deface the currency at times, because sometimes some norms are not good. Some norms should be, defaced, like a coin. The third one is logos, so try to use critical thinking, the nature. That really fits to do with nomos as nomos as control to, you know, do your part as a human being, which is help people who are, you know, not. I guess it's kind of converting people in a sense. So there is sort of a bit of conversion, because some people, like in the conversion, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, you know, try to rely on internal goods rather than external.
Yeah,
goods.
I agree with that.
Meaning, you know, yourself, not material possessions, because some people are owned by their possessions.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
The old Cynic philosophers, they would wear a cloak and a staff and a little backpack, and that was it. And that was considered their attire. And also, the Roman emperor would emulate this. He would put on a cloak, and he would try to go on the ground and you know, practice being a poor man. Because, you know, it can happen to any of us. You know, I'm not against being wealthy or anything like that. And what I'm saying is that you should. It's good to practice cynicism, because, you know what, you can lose stuff at any time. And
for sure.
You should always try to, you know, rely on internal goods, and that's why they talk a lot about self-sufficiency. Because if you want to be self-sufficient, a lot of it, if you have happiness, which is usually internal, that's the natural way of the world.
Sure.
Then you'll be self-sufficient in that sense. Because the first philosopher of this cynicism, he was exiled. Everything was taken away from him. His whole life was ruined. His dad was murdered. He was exiled. He had all his friends, his home, I think even his citizenship, his material possessions, all of it was gone. Much like Zeno the Cynic, you know. He lost all his wealth. What did he have to rely on? He went to Athens. He was poor. He was on the street. He lived in a wine jar. He relied on his internal goods and his happiness and his gratitude for life to be, you know, and I guess the charity of other people as well. So I'm not against wealth, not against certain things.
No, I'm with you there. Yeah, I'm with you there. I agree with that. Even like Ryan Holiday comes to mind. He's been writing some particular books on Stoicism, and certain within Stoicism, obviously, is some Cynic philosophy as well. And he's more. I think what I like about Ryan Holiday's work, he's always Marcus Aurelius. He's always bringing Marcus Aurelius's philosophy in the game.
The last good emperor, yeah.
You know, and it's interesting because how he's connecting like today's events. You know what I'm saying, with certain things we're doing right now, especially as a people, as our mindset. That's really the whole point of these podcast shows, right? Engaging with my fellow brother Gene. You know what I'm saying? Talking about certain subject matters that are really kind of put under the under the rug, especially when it comes to like surveillance, because a lot of us don't really like talking about surveillance, but we use it to an extent in our daily lives, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes, we use it with social media, you know. Some people, you know, they want to know what their other classmates are up to, you know, what are they doing, things of that nature. You're kind of spying on them in a sense.
Yeah.
Well, they call it open source intelligence.
Yeah.
If I say that, open source intelligence. But speaking of the surveillance, what you talked about, a lot of it, that had to do with it too, because when I came back, I started understanding that the U.S., as much as I do love the constitutional and philosophical, foundation and framework behind it.
Yes.
I think that a lot of it can translate to people's lives anywhere, really. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that's universal. And this is why it's so such a big deal how it changed this country, and not even just the country, but the world too. People believe in human rights because of the Enlightenment. These are Enlightenment ideas, and if you go back further, it's the Renaissance. But when I was looking into like constitutionality and all that, it's so ironic that this country, we talk about constitutionality, but we also not only are we kind of a surveillance state. We're not a police state yet, like China, because China is a real police state.
Yes.
We have this sophisticated technology like artificial intelligence programs that are at the cutting edge of facial recognition that are used to consolidate power in the Xinjiang region. So and funny enough, those are technologies that we have worked on. Private American companies have worked on that to help. There's Project Dragonfly. These are American companies that are supposed to, follow the Constitution. Everyone should follow the Constitution. Right?
No, good point.
But yet it's not. It feels kind of sad that my country talks about constitutionality so much, but we're creating and we're exporting and normalizing technologies that are antithetical to the foundational document that we all should follow, ideally, as a civilization, as a cohesive group and society.
Yes.
I find that very strange and kind of just alarming. So that's why I thought this philosophy of cynicism, this is where the watchdog comes in. That's my pitch. I think it should be applied to technology. Cynicism, when you shouldn't just doubt, the intentions of other people and society and all those things, but also maybe even technology as well. I mean, people, they have almost like a religious affinity towards technology at this point. And that's what I mean by extremism and enthusiasm.
And just building on that alone, I think this just a thought to think about. What has happened, I think, with our society, we've been relying too much on technology. Therefore, we haven't been using our own intelligence, if that makes sense, as far as asking the correct questions of how we approaching these different tools or whatever, AI, whatever technology we've been kind of developing. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, okay, you telling me that Elon Musk, he creates something, or he's not just him. Don't take me wrong. He's got these people who already have the ideas. It's kind of like Bill Gates inside Bill's mind. It's interesting because he had the money. It was like $200 million to actually create this toilet, right? This special toilet that does everything in the book. It actually can produce food and everything for you right there. Recycle water, the whole nine. This toilet he invented, not him, but he had the ability to find the people who actually had the technology. But, can put the technology together. He just had the money, funding, boom, boom, boom. The thing is, like, we're not allowing ourselves to think anymore. This is what I'm coming to. Think for ourselves.
You're reminding me of when I was in math class back in the day. They didn't want us to use calculators. They said, no, use it by hand, by your head. And then I'm like, nah, and I started using calculators. I'm like, oh crap, I screwed up my math skills. I should have just done No, because, math, math is extremely important. We use it every day. They call it God's language for a reason, right?
Yes.
It's everywhere. Math is everywhere. And and that has to do with self-sufficiency too. I mean, not only was self-sufficient important for me because of, me just despising just normal work. I mean, I probably would still have to get a regular job at one point, but I'm trying to do freelancing. But I'm after I finish school. But
sure.
Anyway, going back to that was just a little tangent, but going back to the technology enthusiasm spectrum, I think you kind of read that email I sent you, right? Were you able to read that email?
The last one? I know you sent me a few of them, but
okay, yeah, I probably sent you a bunch. So
Tech enthusiasm.
I can just explain it. It's better if I explain it anyway, because this the idea behind it from the watchdogs was.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at it now. Tech
yeah,
Cynicism. Yeah, right here. It's in front of me. I didn't know which one you was referring to because I got both of them up.
I sent a bunch. But anyway, in terms of tech cynicism, I think there is kind of a spectrum. I think the biggest thing we're trying to talk about in this podcast really is the golden mean, which comes from Socrates, and Aristotle inherited it and talked about it a lot, and it relates to math too. But I'm talking about in the philosophical sense. And again, it's mede nagan, nothing in excess. They're try to find the middle path. The middle path is always the best path. The balanced path. So when I talk about tech cynicism, I'm not saying that I am a totally do not use technology and I hate technology. No. I'm saying that you should have, you should be rightly skeptical and a bit doubtful of the technology that is rising. You don't understand it. And a good example was when we're going to talk about the surveillance pandemic in the next episode, that there is this Clearview AI. Clearview AI has questionable data harvesting practices, right? And they want to be the head of the coronavirus tracking initiative back in I think a few years ago, and that tells you something about not even just like technology, but the governmental. Well, it's good that they questioned it. I don't think they actually ended up heading the initiative for the coronavirus tracking, but the fact that they were going to put a company that has questionable practices, and it's very secretive, by the way, too. A secretive company that has questionable harvesting practices, being in charge of all this data, So that's an example why you should be a tech cynic in that sense. So, but anyway, I mean, there's a spectrum. The spectrum is the farthest left is like so extreme. You have Ted Kaczynski. I'm sure you've heard of Ted Kaczynski, right?
Yeah.
So Ted Kaczynski, I mean, he has some ideas that, okay, if you separate him from all the bad things he's done, and to a certain extent it does make sense, but the fact that he had to kill people to try to prove this was the problem. He killed people with his nail bombs, and he's the greatest example of somebody who was so far left on the tech enthusiasm spectrum. I would put him on the left in this one, as he is so extremist. He's going to kill people because he dislikes technology and industrial progress. So that's like to the far left. Then I guess to the middle, I would put us, because I think we should be balanced as tech cynics. I think the old cynics, they were charitable in the sense that they doubted people, they doubted society, but they wanted to help people. They were optimists. They wanted to help the children of nature that were taken away from the natural ways of things in their minds. So I'd say we're in the middle. Then you have the kind of the far right of the technological enthusiasm spectrum, where you have people who are they're okay with these surveillance, essentially like a quasi surveillance state. They're okay with people harvesting their data. They're okay with it being sold. They're okay with they're even okay with government intrusion. I have nothing to hide. Those kind of people.
Yeah.
You have people that they love technology so much that they're okay with all these big tech companies that have access to so many servers, some of the a big chunk of the internet. Google,
big business.
Facebook, Microsoft. They're okay with that. That's a whole new level of enthusiasm for technology. When you want these people, these cult-like figures, running your life and being able to tell you what to say on the internet. When legally speaking, and philosophically speaking, you should be able to say, for the most part, anything online, as long as it's not a call to violence.
Sure.
Right? Sure. So that's what I mean by the spectrum. I want to be in the middle because I'm not an extremist in general. I don't have time to be an extremist. I don't have, you know what I mean?
No, I'm with you. I agree with that, and I think most of our culture we go, it's hot or cold. It's not really no middle ground, and that's what I think where we've been screwing up lately within our society in general. Because even when we delivering this information to our children, see what I'm saying? We're not even the the thing I'm noticing. We're not even teaching our children any principles anymore, any life principles. Therefore, they don't even know how to really measure what the technology is actually doing. Think about this. You got children now, 9, 10 years old, have access to cell phones. It's already that particular technology, what it's doing to the child. Therefore, it's making them dependent on that particular tool or whatever the case may be, giving them these false notions of reality, in other words. You kind of see what I'm saying? And there's really no human interaction anymore. That's what I'm noticing. It's less human interaction. And then when you actually have an opportunity to interact with people, you don't even know how to respond to the situation. You know, that's what I think where technology has been killing us. But like I said, it's mostly the extremism. It's been a lot of extremism going on, even with your facets of your Jeff Bezos, your Bill Gates, your Elon Musk, your Bill Buffett, or your Buffetts, Warren Buffetts. You know what I'm saying? These extremisms, you know, are accepted within our culture.
I think, oh yeah, and you know, regarding what we talked about with the raising your kids, I think we live in too much of a yes culture, whereas you don't want to, you know, defy norms and expectations, and you want to walk around eggshells and make people feel less offended. I think that's not a good culture to live in. It's not a free society. A free society is a society in which people can say what they please, but you will choose not to get offended, and you will let them say what they want because they have the right to free speech. And you know what? There's many things that I get offended about, but I don't let it, affect my life in a negative sense. I've heard a lot of offensive stuff, but I'm not gonna let that affect me in a negative way to the point where I'm victimizing myself. And that's kind of the weird yes culture. We're afraid of making people feel sad about their ideas or challenging their beliefs or etc. This is on both sides. It's seen on both. So not just Republicans, everyone.
Plus, that's how we grow. Yeah, but that's how we grow too. That's another thing I don't think people understand. With even the negative, whatever learning lessons that we achieve or receive within the particular event that we do or have or around, why don't we learn the good out of it? Take the good out of it. You know what I'm saying? We tend to take the negative out of it and kind of have these crazy ideas or concepts. Kind of like this. This is an audio I want to do later, a podcast show. And maybe you guys be interested in coming on board on this. But I would like to do something with, what if all the surveillance, all these issues that we're dealing with right now, what if we just submit to the situation? You know what I'm saying? The whole culture just submit to the situation. Kind of like China. You feel what I'm saying?
I've heard about that, yeah.
Now, what will it look like? What would it look like? I mean, people, this is the thing, the creativity would go away. You see what I'm saying? The mindset, your intelligence, your imagination, if things are made for you or put in a situation, what would you do? You see this with a lot of the rich kids, right? A lot of the rich kids, the 1%, if you want to call it the 1%ers. A lot of them just, all of a sudden, they don't have no personalities. A lot of them don't have no kind of personalities or anything like that when you really start putting things in perspective. Or we can use, for example, celebrities' children raised up. They're not thankful for anything. You can tell within their you know what I'm saying, within their particular upbringing. It's kind of weird, but that's something I just was throwing out there.
No, but it actually, yeah, you wouldn't think it would. Yeah, it really affects creativity. Like, for example, from my Dio, he spent time in China a lot more than me. He's told me that you can't say anything negative about the government or criticize it. So
yes,
that really destroys kind of like, or you have to. It's like essentially you're creating the ultimate like walk around the eggshell, civilization, where it's like you can't say this about this thing. You can't say this about this other thing. So what are you going to do? You're probably going to shut up and just go on your life.
Exactly.
You're not going to defy, society and create something, innovative, disruptive, rebellious, novel.
Purpose I
that
think
kind of regressive society.
Yes. Because I think purpose goes right out the door. Your purpose goes right out the door. Because you're not seeking. You see what I'm saying? You're not seeking for purpose no more. Your agenda's already laid out for you. That's what's so beautiful about the universal truth, because there's really no universal truth, because we're all running on our own accord, if that makes sense. Don't take me wrong. We're all independent on our own journey. It's just about who you allow to come or affect that journey. Hence, where surveillance.
I can see that. And also, you were talking about the kind of the culture we're living in. I was remembering, we haven't done any on the Watch Our Cynics podcast. Funny enough, we have not done any like really cultural commentary or political commentary yet. But what I'd like to do is I think the sociological, psychological, all these aspects to the reason why the society is the way it is, has to do, I think, with hyper individualism. I think when you have hyper individualism, I'm an individualist. I care about myself. I care about my personal freedom and all that. But there's a point where, again, and then I got everything and nothing in excess.
Yes.
Right? That's what the cynics say. When you have people who are so hyper individualistic, narcissistic, and have no empathy, then that's what happens. You create things like, for example, there's less empathy. You're willing to, create cancel culture and things of that sort. I think cancel culture is the reason why I think this cancer.
You saying cancer? You saying cancer culture?
No, cancel culture.
Oh, cancel. Okay.
Culture. Sorry, I got a bit of something in my throat.
It's all good.
Anyway, cancel culture. I think it has to do a lot with narcissism and hyper individualism. My ideas are right, yours are wrong. You are a bad person. I am a good person.
Yes.
Back then I think people would, I wouldn't even say back then, but ideally people would want to say, hey, wait a minute, what is he saying? Why is he saying it? And okay, that's a crazy idea. We're just not gonna entertain your ideas. But there's also this personal vendetta that's going on in people's minds that you are saying something I do not like, therefore you are not me.
Yes.
You do not align with my tribe, so I'm gonna go and attack you. I'm gonna go and ruin your life. I'm gonna dox you. I'm gonna leak out your personal information in the public so people can harass you, fire you, and ruin your life. That is, I guess that's the only social commentary we're interested in, because I think this is something I remember this happening back in the day when. When I came back, I started, hearing about this. Journalists are trying to report on, the truth on facts, and they get. I'm not going to name people because this is not, for their personal safety and privacy, but they're just doing their jobs, and sometimes people don't like it, and they actually dox them
with their descriptions.
Because,
I'm with you. I'm with you. Because, it's just like the job atmosphere, like we was talking about on the last podcast show y'all invited me to on Wine Jar Cynics. People, it seemed like you got all these managerial duties, but you're just associate. You're not a manager. You're not managing people. But, you're managing yourself. Don't take me wrong, but it's like they giving you all these things because they want you to be a part of their culture. These job cultures. Okay, I'm working for Google, so I'm part of Google's culture. So what is that? That's another thing I don't understand too. What are these cultures that you're creating? You claiming that these are certain. You kind of seeing what I'm saying? Because it's a cancel culture. Think about that. It's cancel culture. I work for Home Depot. It's a cancel culture from working at Fred Meyer's. You see what I'm saying? It's not the same. It's not the same culture. It's not the same ideology, if you want to go there. It's kind of interesting when you really dive into that. I'm going to look more into that too. Cancel culture. That's a good one.
I think a lot of it has to do with mob mentality. It's kind of weird. So
yes.
Hyper-individualism mixed with hyper-collectivism, which it just sounds like a tribe, like a warring tribe. Like we all are part of something bigger than ourselves.
Sure.
But we also all are very infatuated with our own ideas, challenge that, then we're going to go after you. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Great approach. How to see it.
It's like kind of like digital. It's like kind of like digital lynching and social or a form of social lynching. You know, there's that in the cynic philosopher. He said the mother of all. The mother of all tyrants is the mob. That's what it was. The mother of all tyrants is the mob. Yeah. And I think what he's saying is that people who are, so, just like this kind of a malevolent mentality, a mob or a witch hunt. At some point, there are people been doxxed, by certain people who they didn't do whatever they are charging them with, in a sense, and they're kind of acting as judge, jury, and executioner all at once, right?
Yeah.
So it's a weird culture. Now I think some of these people I won't say they invite it upon themselves, but they do say some things that are ridiculous at times. But in a free society,
that's questionable too.
You find a way, you find a shield. You find a shield to protect yourself against certain things that may offend you, because everyone's going to be offended at once.
Oh yeah, and that's the beauty of this country. That's what I can say about that. That's the beauty of this country, because you actually can really buck the norm. The thing I'm having a problem with is that freedom, as we call it, freedom of speech. Is that really something that we actually use or engage in? Because soon as somebody buck the system, all of a sudden it's a problem, right? And it's kind of interesting too, because we'll allow Bill Gates to make a vaccine. He don't have no kind of background. You see where I'm coming from? Now I can see if he was a doctor or something in that industry or something, but that don't even make sense. But it makes sense when you can create something and then you can come up with the the answer, right? You develop something and all of a sudden you have the answer. That's where you know it's really crooked. Because I always ask this question: where do this evil mindset come from? Why would anybody want to hurt somebody anyway, thinking you're protecting them with more control? You ever thought about that?
Well, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I feel like a lot of it has to do with just, basic psychology. I think maybe I forgot who's the one who said it, but there's a point when you become so rich, like that money isn't money anymore. It's just points for a scoreboard.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
That kind of mentality. Also, the fact that maybe it could be people like power and control. Everybody wants it, but power corrupts absolutely. And that's why I'm against censorship as well, because or not even just censorship, but like, for example, people who you are not allowed to criticize, because when you give people status gives power.
Yes.
When you have power corrupts absolutely. So when you're not able to criticize people, or they call people are dismissive. That's a big indicator that it's kind of becoming a not so much of a free society anymore. So that is scary when we're creating a culture where you can't really criticize certain people. There was a point where, and I think we can talk about it on the next episode if you'd like, on the surveillance pandemic, where YouTube was shadow banning certain creators because they had other doctors. And they were medically licensed professionals on certain podcasts like Joe Rogan and many other ones.
Sure.
About certain things that they were not allowed to talk about. So that's the big issue with censorship too. You're taking their power in a sense as well. The power to influence people and talk about certain issues, or just get the conversation rolling. Really, it's all about that at the end of the day.
No, that makes very good sense. Very good sense. Because it's definitely, we see it daily. That's the other thing, we see it daily, and I don't think, like I said, you can scroll through Facebook, you can scroll through Instagram, and it's always some type of, maybe that's what I've been kind of getting away from. Because I'm always, when I go through these, and usually I'm not a big Facebooker. I'm just basically posting the content or I think good content, constructive content that is actually helping people. That's really where my mindset is, where I want to approach, how I want to approach the technology or so-called social media. Because it's interesting too, because a lot of people is always saying, well, you want to stay from the surveillance issue. And we'll talk about this on the next episode 95, the surveillance pandemic, and we'll go deeper in that. But I just wanted to state this. It's kind of interesting how we, especially on a business level, you want to interact with some type of social media, But now it's crazy because even like Telegram, is that the new one they coming out with, Telegram?
From what I understand, it is secure. The encryption is secure, but there is...
How long?
There was
How long?
How long, yeah, exactly. But that's the thing, that's the last comment I want to give for people. And this has to do with the cynicism philosophy in general. This is why self-sufficiency is important. I think if people, they had a way to make their own encryption tool and somehow get taught a way to do it easily, maybe with AI or with some kind of software that's super easy to teach you how to do these kind of things, it'd be a lot easier to keep, de-Google your phone and things of that nature. I mean, there's kind of three layers of the tech cynics that we want to focus on. First of all is Journa, which we try to, eventually want to speak of when we actually have the time and money to be able to speak about, these tech cynic topics and surveillance reports, on a daily basis. That's one of our hopes.
Okay.
The other hope would be able to, make like kind of films and show, these ideas that we talk about, like a documentary type films. So perhaps on YouTube. And the third kind of content we'd like to make is where we talk about, have interviews with people who are very well known in their field. But it all comes down to also maybe a fourth type of content where we try to do tutorials on how to, de-Google your phone and...
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool. That'd be really cool.
Even I'm kind of learning this stuff too, but I want to share this kind of content, so that's the tech cynic topic.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, and Matt, and thank you for coming on. We definitely gonna conclude, and we're gonna hit up and we're gonna hit a next. I definitely want to have you on the next show here in the next couple minutes, but we're gonna end that with that. Thank you for tuning in to You Are the Gym podcast show with my guest Gene from Wine Jar Cynics.
And we're on all social
media. Yeah, go ahead. What's your handles? All your handles.
Oh Wine Jar Cynics. So usually you can go on Red Circle. That's our podcast. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast. We're on it everywhere. YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. We're trying to, upload as much as we can. We want to do animations, but if you want to learn about philosophy, that's the podcast.
Okay.
If you want to learn about tech, you go on the Tech Cynic podcast. We call it Watchdog.
Nice.
But you'll find it's going to be in one podcast for now, but we're going to separate it later eventually.
Nice. No, that's on point. That's on point.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time and thank you. Yeah, for good. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. I meant to say that.
No doubt. All good. It's a pleasure, brother. For sure. We're going to end it there. You Are the Gym. We out. Peace. Much love. Happiness. We out.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.